Happy New Year.
Well, good afternoon and welcome to the Monday, January 9th Orono Town Council meeting. Roll call shows all council members are present. And agenda review. I have an item to add to the agenda if I have your unanimous consent. And I think you have it in front of you. It's order 23-19. Could I have a motion to add order 2319 to the agenda?
So
under new
moved.
business? Moved in second?
Second.
Got a second? Any discussion? All those in favor? All in favor, so it gets added. Approval of minutes of December 12th, 2022. Motion to approve, please.
So moved. Second.
Any additions, corrections, or deletions? Seeing none, all those in favor? And all in favor? Public comments, an opportunity for the public to comment on items that are not on the agenda. Is there anybody either in the audience or online that would like to comment? No one in the audience. Belle, is there anybody online?
There is, but nobody has their hand raised.
Okay. Then we'll move on to public hearings. We have several public hearings. And public hearing A is to consider a victualer's license for Global Montello Group Corporation doing business as Old Town, 103 Park Street. DMCP LLC doing business as Dunkin' Donuts, 103 Park Street. Nest Coffee LLC doing business as the Nest, 24 Main Street. And Legacy CP Maine LLC doing business as Wendy's Old Fashioned Hamburgers, 4 Stillwater Avenue.
That's me.
Beg your pardon?
So that's me.
Yeah, sure. That's not our code enforcement.
Not our code officer today. So a victualer's license is a local license that allows premise on food preparation, on premise food preparation. There we go. So our staff goes out and inspects for code enforcement and life safety violations. We also have conversations with the police department to see if there have been any issues. Pursuant to council policy, we also check for personal property taxes to make sure that they are current. Staff did this for all of the businesses that you just referenced and recommend approval of license.
Is there any comment for or against the issuing of these licenses, either from council or the public? Any from the public? Anybody online, Belle, that would like to comment on these?
Nobody with their hand raised.
Thank you. I happened to stop in at All Town and was very impressed with the renovation work they've done there. Good looking business. I'll close public hearing A and move on to public hearing B to consider a class 1 malt liquor, wine and spirit liquor license and victualer's license for Barnsworth Enterprises Incorporated doing business as Pat's Pizza, 11 Mill Street, Orono.
So with liquor licenses, the town is not granting the license. However, there is a section of the license that the town has to weigh in on. Much like victualers, the state is looking for whether or not there are any issues locally. So we have the same group, code, life safety, and law enforcement. Law enforcement in Orono is also the jurisdiction having authority on local liquor enforcement. So all of those entities went out, did inspections, reviewed the data on file. And with this particular one, there are some minor issues with the sprinkler system. While staff was on site, the owner or owner representative made the appointment to have the sprinkler system reviewed. It's not far out of date. So staff is actually recommending full approval of the license without condition.
Okay. So open it to any comments for or against the issuing of this license from council or the public. Hearing none, I will close public hearing B and move on to public hearing C. To consider a class 11 malt liquor, wine and spirit license, spirit liquor license and victualist license for Yama Incorporated, doing business as Yama Bar and Grill, 19 Mill Street.
So the same cast of characters went out and did inspections. There were a couple of very minor code issues that staff is working to resolve with the owner. No indication that there will be any issue. So staff is recommending full approval of this license.
Once again, any comments for or against the issuing of this license from council members or the public? And hearing none, I will close public hearing C and move on to public hearing D. To consider a class 1 malt liquor, wine and spirit liquor license, special amusement permit for dancing, music, dancing and entertainment, and victualist license for the University of Maine, doing business as the Collins Center for the Arts, 5746 Collins Center.
So along with the same individuals going out and doing inspections and reviewing records, it's just important to note for council that the University of Maine has several subsets that apply for separate liquor, victualers, and other licenses with us. All the inspections came back completely clean, and staff recommends approval of the license.
And again, any comments for or against the issuing of this license from council members or the public? And hearing none, I will close public hearing D and move on to public hearing E. To consider ordinance amendments to the Town of Orono ordinances, Chapter 2, Article 5, Finance, Division 2, Purchasing, to update purchasing information to current practice. And I think that's you again.
This is me. I'm busy today. So we talked with council for about a year. Just we need to update the purchasing policy, and then in late November, we brought a draft to council's Finance and Operations Committee for review. We are looking at doing a couple of things with this revision. The first is to balance the openness of procurement with efficient use of town resources. So we wanted to kind of find a bit of a balance there. We also wanted to take advantage and speak to things that were not necessarily available and ways that people did business back when the ordinance was originally adopted. So for example, if we can distribute bids through posting on the town website, we can advertise on professional websites. So the web was just not as used as it is now. So it is part of the publicity allowing for that, as opposed to having to spend the $700 or $800 to advertise in the Bangor Daily News, which can get really expensive. We also talked about kind of streamlining the process around the withdrawal of bids. Before, it was kind of clunky. The other thing that was kind of clunky in the ordinance is that the ordinance presupposed like individual large purchases happening within departments separate from the town manager's office, but all of our internal controls in our process have those large purchases go through the town manager's office anyway, which has finance as a subset of the manager's office. So we wanted to clean that up a little bit and make it really clear that the town manager is the purchasing agent. Some of those authorities can be delegated, but in general, we're not having department heads go out and procure large items all of them. We really wanted to highlight the reserving the right to award or decline awarding to bids. So that is throughout the ordinance as changes. Sometimes a little more implicit and specific to the item that it's talking about in terms of negotiating or bidding. And but however, within this ordinance, we actually have a reservation of rights clause that says that we can accept or reject any and all bids. We outlined what a public announcement should look like, which is in keeping with the way announcements are made now with RFPs or requests for proposals that or qualifications that are really clearly identified what it is we're trying to purchase and what the evaluation criteria will be. We clarify that small purchases used to be anything over anything that was under $5,000. We've changed that to $50,000. And then we've set criteria for small purchases over $2,500 to go through some very clear checks and balances within our process. And ensuring that people are actually looking for best prices, not just picking up the cheapest thing. We continue to have the ability to circumvent some of that with emergencies, which we've had before, like major wind events or things like that. Small purchases under $2,500 would stay the department by department, and the town manager creates operational procedures in the ordinance. By virtue of what we actually do, that will be covered in the internal controls manual, which we'll bring back to council. We have, before there was a very explicit 5% allowance for buying local. So essentially it envisioned that you went out to quotes, and if something was 5% or less, cost less than 5% more, you should buy that locally. There we go. It really spoke to local being within our community. What we find is that Maine feels pretty local for lots of the goods and services that we're buying, and that 5% isn't very much. And there might be reasons why it makes sense to pay a little bit more for the quality, the ability to get it off the shelf, and the service that we might get. So this gives a little bit of more wiggle room with that. It also increases the allowance for sole source procurement. It says that town council can sole source any if there is only one source that provides the equipment or the service. That would happen for something like if we were going to go buy another sidewalk machine, we'd want a holder. It's a very specialized piece of equipment. While there are 2 holder dealers in the state of Maine, they carved up the state and only one would ever bid. They have a bit of a monopoly. So that would be an item that there was only one place to go to. We also are tweaking it to say that if we are using pricing that's arrived at through a public bidding process. So a good example of that might be salt, road salt. Rob gets the numbers for road salt, the state road salt bid, and then goes and negotiates as good or lower price for the town. That to me is, we've created the standard, and anybody could bid those. The city of Brewer went out and did a public bid process for lights when we did the LED conversion. And if you recall, based on their experience and the fact that they were the only vendor that worked with the Versant Power or Bengal Hydroelectric back then, we wanted to go with them. So something like that. And then the catch-all, which is that a contract can be awarded without competition if the town council determines that it's in the best interest of the town. You guys like it when we give you that power to do it. We talked a little bit about bonding, and the threshold for requiring performance bonds was $15,000, which is really low in the industry. So we changed that to 100,000. And the fact that we reserve the right to require performance bonds or sureties at lower levels if we think it's in the best interest of the town. This is dry, I know, I went through it. It's 13. So cooperative purchasing, the ordinance has always allowed us to join with other entities on cooperative purchases. This is saying that we can use those purchases even if we weren't involved in the initial purchasing cooperative purchase. So for example, the state's police cruiser bid, we usually tag on to that. Technically, with the way the ordinance was written before, we probably shouldn't have. And that is 15 of 5 of 15. So I think I captured the major changes.
Thank you. Any comments from council or public for or against this proposed change in ordinance? All right, Mr. Kenny.
I have maybe a procedural question. I swear I read this under new business and I thought we were actually discussing this tonight. I don't know what I read. I apologize. And I wasn't here for the meeting where it was originally discussed. The one meeting I missed. I do have several questions I would like to go through, and I wonder if we could bring this back to finance subcommittee.
So the way I had planned, and I don't control what I had planned, this comes with, if we make changes to the ordinance, we also need to make changes to the internal controls manual, and we really need to adopt them at the same time, or else I'm doing one can't really function separate from the other. So I think it would be important perhaps that we chat in advance, Leo, to understand how major your issues are. So could we begin work on drafting the internal controls manual to kind of make this work, and then or do you need it to come back to for a total review?
You want to advance this right now, or do you want to meet, sit down, or just send you what I'm talking about?
We can sit
Between now
down,
and
you
then.
can send me, you can
Okay.
call me. You can
Yeah,
text
no,
me,
then
however.
maybe that's fine. We could, that's fine. But I thought this was I thought we were just reviewing this draft. Listening, I see draft and I think, okay.
Everything is a
I
draft
know,
until it's
done.
adopted.
I know.
Yeah.
But I don't know why I thought this was just a first reading. So, yeah, that's fine. So what does that mean we're doing with
So
this now?
This is just a public hearing, and we're not going to be taking any action on this change tonight. And there's plenty of opportunity for feedback before we take any action.
Leo, I'm curious if you could, if you want to sort of share the tenor of your questions in like just a sentence or two, just so that
I mean, I've got.
the rest of us can get our wheels turning and make sure we haven't overlooked something that would be helpful to think about, but.
It's several areas and I've highlighted them. I think it would be probably,
Sure.
will come across fairly, and some of it's just question as to why we're doing something and stuff like that. So,
Yeah,
I probably can't do that very concisely, but I appreciate it.
no
Yes.
problem.
Are there any other comments in this public hearing from council members of the public?
I have a comment not for or against necessarily, but just on page 8 at the top, we're talking about the preference to small businesses located in Maine. I think that is a good change. Removing a sort of quantitative cap, I think is maybe worth a little bit more deliberation. I'm not necessarily against, just saying, as long as the quoted price is reasonably related to the lowest quotation received, which is what we have in this proposed change. But I think it's worth us at least discussing whether or not an actual like number limit is important to us.
Anything else?
I did note a couple of places where town manager wasn't capitalized, where it was elsewhere, so for consistency, we could word search that, maybe town council too, while we're cleaning a thing up, may as well be internally consistent with those things.
I think one of the things you'll find is I like capital, because we
Yeah.
capitalize
I agree,
titles,
that makes sense to me.
but the former town council and town manager were never.
Yeah, so I appreciate the suggested changes, capitalizing a lot, and there were a couple that got missed.
I'll go back and look at that.
Right.
Well, actually, I'll go back and ask Nancy.
Maybe one question, I guess specifically I could ask is that on the small purchases, we changed it from 5 to 50. Correct?
Yes.
And is this the number that? I didn't see small purchase defined, so is this what can be spent without council approval? It's
No,
not.
no.
Okay.
So we spent a lot of time on this when we were at committee. So this speaks to the process you have to go through to purchase at certain levels. Is it an RFP? Is it an RFQ? Does it have to be, bidded out? How many quotes do you need? That kind of thing. The delineation between how much authority is delegated to staff and how much goes to council is something that's in the internal controls manual, so there's council policy. That's why we adopt them at the same changes at the same time. So
this doesn't influence that then? Or not?
no, so for example, what it means is that when Rob wants to buy a $7,500 piece of equipment, he doesn't have to go through a bid process to do that. Council still has to come back through the internal controls manual process to determine what is the number that they feel comfortable delegating to the town manager, and then having the town manager delegate a smaller number to department heads. So it's two different. This doesn't say who's buying, this says how we buy.
Okay, because I thought in that same small purchase, it did require three quotes.
Yep, that's a how, that's not a who. So there are times, so we could bring, so for example, money spent from, reserve accounts, regardless of how much it is, right now, comes to town council. So if it's $1,000, you should expect to see quotes, or at least be told what people found when they reviewed. You kind of see what I'm saying?
Yes, but I guess that, so I'll have to, what are the major differences between large purchase and small purchase then? Because the three quote thing kind of seems to be for large purchases also.
So, anything according to the change we're trying to make is, the threshold of if it's over $2,500 to $50,000, you have to go get quotes, estimates, search to find what comparable pricing would be. So it's not just, I want to buy it and I want to buy it from Megan. It's, I have to look around and see who owns such. Over 50,000, we're looking at an RFP, request for proposal, or a request for qualifications or a straight bid process.
Okay, no RFQ down there in the small purchase. I thought that was good.
No, RFQ,
Or RFP.
I think
It's
no,
not.
they shouldn't be.
Okay, all right. well,
So Leo, one of these afternoons,
I'll go
pour
look at that
yourself
meeting.
a nice hot cup of tea, put your feet up by the wood stove and listen to the most scintillating finance committee you've ever heard.
Yeah, that would probably make sense. That is the meeting I missed. There's an excuse that.
Yeah.
I brought my dog.
So, again, there'll be another opportunity to review this, an opportunity for you to communicate any information, any concerns you have with Sophie before council reviews, and we'll be back looking at it again.
So based on what I'm hearing, and I hope Leo and I can have a conversation sooner rather than later. I'll have Zach, Zach and I will start looking at changes to the internal controls.
Okay, are we ready to move on to acknowledgements by council members? I beg your pardon? Oh,
Another, we have another. No, it's stable, sorry.
Oh, it's stable.
thank you. No, that's fine, question. Acknowledgements by council members, and let's start on this side with Rob, if we could.
Well, we've talked about it quite a bit, but the lights down on by the river, I went down there the very last night that they were open. It was nice to still see, despite some vandalism earlier on in its run, it was still a really nice thing to share with a few kids that were tagging along there.
Cool. I would like to make an acknowledgement that's also a shout out to the NAACP and University of Maine for running their MLK breakfast this coming Monday. If you're looking for a thing to do the morning of MLK Day, it's a lovely event.
I would like to acknowledge the sun, which I saw briefly when I got out of work. For many months now, when I get out of work, it is dark and sad, but today, less sad. So in just a few short weeks, we'll be seeing, the sun setting at 6, 7 o'clock at night. So that's,
No more than weeks, but it's coming.
listen, Tom, don't take this away.
I second that. And Happy New Year, everyone. It's my lunch.
Yeah.
I would like to acknowledge the amazing artwork by fireman Dennis Bean on our new truck. Not seen it in person, but I've seen some pictures of it and it looks amazing. We're really fortunate that he donates his talent to Orono. Truck looks bad.
In the best way.
I would kind of tag on that and acknowledge the Orono Fire Department. I did have a chance to go and look at the new truck and get a really good opportunity to see what it has. And the time that our staff took to develop specifications for what they really wanted, I was very impressed with. I was also impressed with the procedure that they go through to put this new vehicle in service. It's very extensive and impressive, so.
It will be a while before
Yeah.
people get to see it, but when you do see it, it stands out. It's
It
much
does.
bigger than, it's longer and higher than the other ones, and it has, you can't call it Montreal blue, we're gonna call it UMaine blue on the top, so it will definitely pop.
But plenty of red.
Plenty of red.
Yeah, they gotta have red.
It's definitely a fire engine.
And I also like to acknowledge Public Works for the work they did in our most recent storm. I think sometimes those small storms are harder to deal with than the 10-inch or 12-inch light powder storm, and they really got out there and did a great job. I appreciate that. Okay, unfinished business. We do not have any unfinished business. Consent agenda. Could I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
In a second?
I would like to take order 2310 and 2311 and remove them from the consent agenda.
Okay, 23 again. And 2311, did you say?
Yes.
Okay. With those deletions, we're ready for a vote on the consent agenda. All in favor? We'll take those items up under new business. And we are in new business now, so we'll take them up.
Great, and I didn't have concerns about either of these.
Wait,
I-
I think we need to go through the process.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
So
Parliamentary stuff.
order 2310 is an order approving the membership of the Main Service Center Coalition for 2023 and designating Sophia Wilson as the voting representative and designating Bell Ryder as the alternative. So that is the order. Could I have a motion to approve in a second?
Move approval.
Second, and then we'll have discussion.
So the Main Service Center Coalition is a group that we belong to, of communities in the state that are classified as service center communities. So this actually spun out of some conflict many years ago at Maine Municipal Association's Legislative Policy Committee, where you have a high number of small towns and everybody has one vote. And so the MMA was taking positions on issues like local option sales tax and service center issues around revenue sharing and other mostly revenue issues. The Service Center Coalition members tend to be larger communities. So they spun out this group. It's actually supported in part by Maine Municipal Association, but it's an opportunity for us to sit together. It also works. The lobbyist for that group works with the Mayor's Coalition, which is a relatively new group. It's just focusing on the fact that there are 491 communities in the state. There are a handful of communities that are not like all the rest. Tax exempt issues are bigger for us and things that might not get the legislative advocacy arm of MMA to really step in and help educate around larger community issues.
Great.
Questions?
My question was, what is that, which has been wonderfully answered. So thank you. I feel ready for a vote.
Can I just ask, we're not a service, center, right?
Yes, we are.
Bangor was the service center.
So Bangor is what drives everybody here. Service Center is a statutory identified community. And so we are a service center because we are very low, very high tax exempt status. We serve the University of Maine. So there are elements in terms of population valuation and the level of people who influx into your community for services. So like Dover Foxcroft is a service center community. Believe it or not, when I was in Brownville was a service center community. I used to joke and say we serve the moose, but so it's
Bangor a different designation as well?
I would
Service center.
guess. So yeah, they're a CDBG self receiver. They are a special designation in a couple of different ways. I don't work there, so I don't have. to
Yeah,
know
no,
that.
I've
So,
always just heard that they're a service center, and I thought
Yeah.
that we weren't, so.
so I think for the community, they are our service center. They are where we go for hospitals and a lot of services, the economic driver in the region. They're a regional service center. For the purpose of the Service Center Coalition, that it's a statutory designation or designation of new revenue district.
Thank you.
Sophie, can I ask just one question too? I feel like we do this every year. Is this a
We do.
1 year
Yep.
term kind of thing, and then you just up your membership? every year?
So I'm technically on this board until the end of next year.
Okay.
We up our membership every year. We have budget discussion and decide whether or not we're going to renew them.
Okay. Thank you.
We all set?
Yeah.
All those in favor? All in favor, none opposed. And order 2311, order approving the warrant for the March 14th, 2023 annual municipal election, setting the hours of voting as 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. and the polling place as council chambers of the municipal building for wards 1, precinct 1, 2, and 3. Sonia,
Great.
We need a motion.
motion to approve.
I'll second it for now too.
So we had a motion to approve in a second.
Yeah,
Okay.
and my question was, how we decide whether voting will be held at the municipal office versus on campus, because I know sometimes it's one way and sometimes the other.
Good question.
So, the town has to provide a consistent polling location with the state for state and federal elections. So our major state and federal elections are held up on campus. I think referendum elections, this is a fallback place, and I think that Shelley works closely with the state and others to determine how much turnout we would garner for that. And then local elections, council, when we established the request to the state to move to the field house many years ago, several years ago now, that was part of the whole discussion was what are we gonna do with for our local elections? So right now, local and elections and potentially small referendum elections are held in council chamber. All other elections are held right now at the field house. We are evaluating alternatives to the field house to make it a little bit easier for people to get in and out. But that's a whole state, for the state and federal, we have to go through a whole state process that council has to weigh in on and approve.
Is it significantly more complex to host
Yeah.
elections on campus? So,
Much more complex. And we also, that shuts down a lot of campus effort. So the buy-in that we have from campus at this point is for state and federal elections and not so much for local elections.
yeah, it seems a shame that I know there are students who are more distanced from engagement in town affairs than they would otherwise be, because it's like hard to get off campus to vote. And it seems, I appreciate when elections are on campus, but that sounds like maybe more of a thing than we can fix in tonight's meeting.
So I just want to remind everybody that the Black Bear Express does run and it's free and students can take that. In fact, anybody can take it around, whether it's around campus or downtown. And also on federal election days, November election days, the Community Connector often runs free fare days so that people who have a difficult time getting on campus are able to catch the bus as well.
Thank you, Bill. Any other questions? Are you ready for a vote on order 23-11? All those in favor? All in favor, none opposed. Okay, and now we will move on to new business. And new business order 23-15. Order approving the contract zone application for Zachary Pike located at 74 Mill Street, tax map 27-12, lot 35. The application proposes to change the zoning district for the parcel from medium density residential to village commercial, subject to certain restrictions. And I see we have our planner and our manager here. I'm not sure who's taking this.
I'll move approval.
Yeah, thank you.
That's Kyle. Okay.
All right, so at this point, the contract zone agreement has gone through the usual process of committee to planning board public hearing, back to council committee. It's had its council public hearing. After council public hearing and some of the feedback, we held another council committee meeting where we discussed a few items. The most recent draft that you should have all received highlights the language that we talked about being addressed at that last committee meeting to kind of finish up on some of those last remaining topics and areas of comment. The draft has also gone through legal review and came back with just a couple minor language changes, switching things from the property to subject premises and things like that for consistency's sake. Just real quick to run through the changes since the public hearing. It's really just to clarify, what was already intended, or to add in what was spoken about at the public hearing and the committee meeting following. So we clarified, that a restaurant, doesn't include things like drinking establishments, dance halls, or nightclubs. So when we talk about those commercial uses for the front of the building, those would not be, things that would be allowed, should this go through. When we're talking about restaurant, it's more of a eating establishment. While there could be some component of a bar like other restaurants around town, it wouldn't be the principal use of the storefront. We have the language in there that we talked about last time, dealing with the deck and the placement of that. The cap on the maximum number of 3-bedroom units. We had conversations with the applicant. Originally, we talked about going to 8. After further discussion, we went down to 5. So when we talk about, the total number of dwelling units in the building, keeping that at that 30 number to allow the flexibility depending on how much commercial space there is, or, how many 1 versus 2-bedroom units, which would be the primary use of the building. The applicant felt comfortable going down to 5 3-bedroom dwelling units at most. Adding in some clarifying language to state that the commercial space would be that 6,000 square feet is for both commercial spaces, not 6,000 square feet each. And then finally, adding in some language that the subject premises would follow the noise level limits of the abutting properties on Mill Street. So we did give that some thought and kind of landed on that as seemingly the best way to deal with that, as there would be a potential world where if Mill Street was ever rezoned, that some of those other abutting properties in the back of the property off smaller streets might not be rezoned in the same way. So seeing those 2 abutting properties on either side on Mill Street to determine what the noise level allowance would be for this property. But those were really the final things that we discussed last time. Happy to answer any other questions people have.
Thank you, Kyle, and I appreciate the effort that you and others have put into reviewing and making modifications and bringing this back to us a number of times. Questions or comments from council?
You spoke to the decks?
Yes.
That was great. Yeah, much appreciated, both your efforts and the developers' efforts, going back and taking care of those few concerns that we heard from the public. I think the process was very good. Excited for improvements that are going to take place down there.
Yep, we put this through quite a process, and I'm happy with the results. I'm looking forward to seeing this project. I actually have a coworker. So when I first read the comp plan and read that statistic about something like 80% of Humane's staff do not live in Orono, right? And it was like mind blowing to me. And I actually have a coworker who was working for our department in Portland and switched to a different role and is now back in Orono. This is a person who describes, she's 25 and describes her 50-year plan as working for the University of Maine, period. So she really wants to be here. And, this is when we were casually talking about this project, and she's like, I wish it was happening right now so I could like move in. But this is exactly the sort of thing that I think that the comp plan was trying to address in terms of creating a housing supply that is for a demographic of folks that we sometimes miss in this community. And I just think this is a great step forward.
Any other comments from council?
I would like to add to that, listening to Rachel Talbot Ross this afternoon, and talk about Maine's housing crisis, that this helps. I think this helps this area. And I think that we're in it's a good project. And it's beneficial to many people. So I think this is a great use of that building.
Any comments from the public, either in person or online? Hearing none. Are we ready for a vote? All those in favor? All in favor, none opposed. Kyle, thank you again.
Yeah.
Appreciate the work you did on this. We look forward to exciting project. Okay, order 23-16. Order authorizing the town manager to accept and expend, if awarded, a grant from Brookfield Renewable for up to $7,000 for equipment purchase and training related to fire department swift water rescue operations. Motion. So moved. Second. Thank you.
So I'm gonna start. So I'm excited to report that we have been awarded. So this is actually a grant application that Kevin came to council, or Jeff came to council about 18 months ago and asked for permission to apply for year for swift water rescue, which is a service that we do provide in the region, and training. We've had some considerable turnover in the fire department. We wanted to make sure we've had good training of our staff. So we heard from Brookfield that we did not get the grant. And so we said, oh shucks, there goes Kevin's perfect grant batting average, and went about our day. And without submitting another application, we were actually received notice that we were funded. So it, to me, is a little murky to use not only an authority from 18 months ago, but where we received notice we didn't get that particular one. I wanted to bring it back just so it was really clear. And Kevin is here to talk about swift water rescue and answer any questions you might have.
All right, so you may wonder why swift water rescue. So years ago, we were able to pretty much get in anywhere in our bodies of water with our boat. As soon as some of the dams started to get removed, we saw a difference in water level, which didn't allow us to get to some locations, especially in the Penobscot River. So we started looking at, well, what are some alternatives? We need to get out and rescue someone off a rock or an island, and we can't use our boat. So we started looking into swift water operations. And we actually got in touch with a world-renowned actual instructor, and he's actually a native of Maine. And he came and taught our first swift water rescue class probably about 10 years ago. And we only had a few people between Old Town and Orono, and we really didn't have a lot of gear. So we started little by little, getting more traction on trying to get more people trained and getting a little bit of equipment, which we've allocated some funds to the last 5 years, I would say. But we've really been just really looking, trying to find a way that we can purchase more equipment, wetsuits and dry suits and ropes and whatnot. So we have right now only enough to outfit 2 people. And now we are looking to be able to outfit for warmer weather, for wetsuits and dry suits, and enough helmets and gear for our people. And also to send more people to swift water rescue class, hopefully this summer. It is a really unique training. It's probably one of the more dangerous things that we do. So that's why the training is so important and why we picked this instructor to train us. And I've taken the class myself, and it's probably one of the best classes I've ever taken. So with these funds, it'll allow us to train more of our individuals and also give us that personal protective equipment that we need.
Questions from council? Sounds like a great thing to do. Any comments from the public? Either in house or online? Ready for a vote?
Sorry, it doesn't include a hovercraft.
Right?
Let's get a comment.
All those in favor? All in favor, not opposed, and thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
Appreciate the time. Moving on to order 23-17, order engaging Runyon Kirsten Willett of South Portland for FY 2022, through FY 2026 for financial services, and further authorizing the town manager or town council chair to execute all necessary documents to formalize this engagement. The quote for those years is listed. Be glad to be able to like it to, but I think it's so much better.
Move approval. Second.
Sophie, want to comment on this?
Only to say that ultimately the town council decides who the audit firm is. You are required to have one. I will also, say that, Runyon, Christine and Alette have been our auditors since 2013. A lot has changed over that time, and we've gone through a couple of different partners and many different field auditors during that time. So it has definitely not been the same people doing the work.
I would just add that when we first engaged this Runyon Kirsten and Willett, we went through an extensive process of interviewing a number of firms. We were not particularly satisfied with who we had before. Not because they weren't doing a competent job in conducting the actual audit, but they weren't providing the council with recommendations to improve our financial operation. And I think that's a significant change that I've seen with Runyon, Kirsten and Willett, that they do talk about best practice, not that what we're doing is wrong or illegal or unethical, but here's a way you can bring your practice up just that notch. And they've, over the years, they've done it. They've got a number of very good suggestions. With that, other comments or questions?
Question too.
Sure.
Do you feel, because I know you're part of this, you and Megan have been part of this. Do you feel like consistency is crucial, and maybe Sophie too, like just address? I mean, I'm just asking you that, because to me, it seems like knowing knowing the town's budget, knowing the process and knowing you and working with you as people too, that keeping it consistent is probably a benefit as well.
So I'll give an interesting response.
Okay.
I think consistency is good with a firm.
Mhm.
I think consistency with an individual is not necessarily what you're looking for. And that's one of the things I've liked about this operation is they have changed the primary person from time to time. I think if you have the same person, there could be a tendency to get friendly with them, and so that you don't get that critical perspective that you want in an audit. So I think, I guess I answered it both ways. Consistency with the firm, I like, because I think they have a good philosophy, and they're really, all of them are really tuned into best practice. But then changing the individual who actually does it from time to time, I think that's a good practice.
I will say, you asked me kind of what it's like, and I like working with RKO. It is not easy to get through an audit. They are challenging, which they should be. If it were easy, then I think council should think about why that is. But their field audit people change, so I have no idea what one person thinks is important. One time we go through the internal testing, the next year they're looking at something completely different, just because different people have different things that they're doing. Thank you.
Other questions, comments?
So in the document you provided us, it looks like there's fluctuation of about $1,000 a year up until this year when it jumps like $2,500 or so, and then they're projected to fluctuate again about $1,000.
So I had significant conversation with Casey when he was doing the audit, because audit firms, so I belong to listservs that have treasurers and tax collectors, because that's one hat I wear, and also town managers, because that's the other hat I wear. And, communities are struggling to find audit firms right now. Just like we have struggled with municipal employees, they're having a hard time maintaining for, field audit people. And so firms have jettisoned some clients, because they just don't have capacity to manage them anymore. When I was talking with Casey and asked him for the quote, he actually was preparing me for a much higher increase than this. And it's, a lot of it has to do with the fact that they had to significantly increase their starting wage package for field auditors to come on board. And he, in order to maintain stability within their organization, they had to increase what they were paying for. And that has to get passed down to the customer. So this is a reset. And I would say, remember that the 2022 audit was quoted back in 2018. So I'm gonna guess, I chewed his ear for the $1,000 reduction because they weren't here for most of the field audit this year. We did a lot of that remotely, which is why if he quoted 26, we paid 25, which is in the bottom of that. But remember that got quoted 5 years ago. So there's also that kind of catching up. I think their intent is to not have huge swings. I will also say in the last 5 year cycle that we had, GASB brought on some changes that were really complicated with regard to post-retirement benefits and other benefits other than post-retirement. And how we allocate leases, bonds, those kinds of things. So GASB's really gotten a little bit more complicated, which has added a layer within the audit. I did ask him to quote single item separately. A single item audit is not something that is subjective. It's if we reach $750,000 worth of federal grant expenditure, we're required to have a single item audit. And I wasn't sure I know we're gonna have to have one. I wasn't sure which year it was gonna be, because it really depends on when the money goes out the door, not when it comes in. So that's why we did it as an add-on. I'm hoping we can keep it to 1 year and not 2.
Other questions?
Yeah, I just, the consistency thing is something I think that's a good answer and an interesting answer, but I think it just as inconsistent is probably who they've been working with here in town, right? We've got multiple people in finance or, so, I mean, that probably, I'm not sure what that is worth necessarily, presumably they have other municipalities that they're doing, so these layered changes, I assume, must be across the board for them, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I think the other thing though is like, so when we went from Connie to Zach, that really wasn't a change for them because I was the one overseeing the finance during that time.
So they work with you on trying to say.
Connie, Zach pulls information, Bob pulls information, but I'm the overall, the one that.
And the other thing that I think, I feel like 10 years is probably I think a healthy thing for going out and seeing what else is out there personally. And the fact that we went from 25 to 31.2, and I get 25 is what we end up paying. Presumably, they're still going to be somewhat remote, but a 25% increase from 1 year to the next feels to me like that alone might trigger an RFQ. Or just to put it out there and see, keep everyone honest and make sure we're still in the right range.
So was it 2,500, not 25%?
It went from 25 grand to 31.2.
Yeah, it's a
It's
6,000.
25%. Which is significant, and then it's 10% across 4 years. But I just think for the overall health of being 10 years, the consistency is good, but hey, someone else might have other bring something else to the table that we haven't seen in 10 years. So personally, I'd like to see us get it out and just see what else is out there.
Yeah, I'd support that. I don't have any reason to imagine that this isn't a fair rate that they're quoting us and it appears like they've done a really professional and wonderful job for us with this year's audit, but on principle, the sort of 10 years, put it out and get new quotes every 10 years feels like a healthy thing to me too.
I don't have any desire to necessarily follow up on looking for another firm, but I'm curious, Sophie, if you could talk about if there's any potential negative drawback to not adopting this tonight and trying to go out looking for another firm.
So I think the audit for FY 23, I don't know. I mean, that's why I kind of brought this up in November and again in December. It is at this point, we're trying to schedule now a June field audit and a September audit. So I don't know that there is time for FY 23 to put that out. I think the risk you run when you have a relationship like this, you put it out to bid, they don't have to go with what they quoted before. So you're at the market. And if they're the only ones that are bringing on new clients, then you're at a risk that they might want to bring in more money. On the other hand, they may have quoted the actual price, and so what shows up is what shows up. I will say, when we did the bid last time, RKO was not the cheapest. And I think council just, I think that's a piece, you know, I fully understand the idea of going out to bid on a periodic basis. I would suggest if you wanted to do that, you should be going out to bid the year or two before you want to actually change service, because it takes time to cycle that into their schedule as well.
I wonder, could you call, there's only probably a handful, well, I think you mentioned a few in that response, and I know one of them is the one that does the school as well. The other ones, I didn't recognize, but what about putting a call and see if they're taking on new clients? Because I would think that if they are, that scheduling something for June, I can't imagine that problem. If they say, you know, if no one's really taking them on, I think that's an easy
decision.
Yeah.
I really feel the time is crucial here, that by the time we put out a request for proposals, interview people that respond to it, check other communities or other establishments they have worked with, which we did the first time around. We talked to a lot of communities that RKO worked with, and that was one of the reasons they went with them. I think we're really pressing time for our staff and ourselves. So I understand the interest in going out to bid. I just don't see if it's realistic to do it for the FY 23 year. I could live with looking at it at a future date. I mean, I'm not going to be here, but to look at it.
This ties us into 40 years, obviously, right?
Well, that was my question. Did we sign up for it?
Well, we could. I think we have flexibility. I mean, I think we could say to RKO, we accept your price for the FY 23 year. But the council has decided that they really want to go out to bid for and look at other firms, not that they're dissatisfied with you, but just as a matter of good business practice for the future. So we were going to say something, and I stepped in.
No, I was gonna say, I think you could accept whatever you want to. He might come back with a different price for 23. I don't know. I mean, I just think about how I bargain. If I offer something as a package, it's a package. So I think it would be a negotiation. I think too, though, that I think Tom was being generous with Purdy Power. I went to council and asked council to consider a different audit firm because I had concerns with the audit process and the work product that we got from the audit. when I was being asked for numbers that to be placed in the audit that were their responsibility to audit, that is concerning to me. And I'm not sure that municipal audit services is even in business. Back when we bid it, they were almost half again as higher than our.
What about, is it brand something? Like
Brantner Thibodeau, they're very much a school firm, but
did they, oh, I thought you said they did too.
they did.
So where I'm at is, I understand and I can see the logic in, as a business practice, evaluating something like this. I am not uncomfortable with saying I can commit to a 4-year contract, putting a pin today in the idea that council will want to, with much advance notice, right, go into consideration of putting this out to bid. For me, the turnaround feels too quick right now. The risk involved in potentially going out even next year or the year after, the risk that the offer here for FY23 might change as a result of not accepting 4 years, the risk that we could go out to bid and they could come in with a much higher price, and that then may be the only option, and we've kind of shot ourselves in the foot. It seems like there's a lot of room for error, a lot of risk, and potentially also, I think it's worth noting that, again, this is a good business practice, and I agree with it in principle. However, it also is going to be an extensive, time-consuming process for us and for staff. We do tend to come into these meetings and add to the plate. And I think that we need to be very careful about what we add. Some things I think need to jump the line, and we absolutely need to add certain things to our plate. Is this something that we urgently need to add to our plate and staff's plate today? For me, maybe not. I could live with a 4-year contract, knowing that with a lot of advance notice, we would potentially, the next time this is going to come around, want to be putting it out to bid just to see what's out there.
Well, alternatively, they could come back and realize that 25% might be a big jump to do in 1 year and say, okay, we could actually reduce that. So I guess the risk could be a reward there as well. So I don't.
Yeah, for
I
me,
don't
the
think
balance would be the
I'll-
scarcity of the auditors. The scarcity of the auditors would be the balance.
So we have a motion on the floor. I think it might be time to either vote it up or vote it down.
Yeah.
Are we okay with moving to a vote? So all those in favor of order 23-17? Four in favor. Those opposed? 3 opposed. Motion passes 4-3.
Who's the fourth? Wrong,
1,
okay, I
2,
missed.
3, 4.
Okay.
But
Close call.
what Megan said, like, take a look at it.
Yep.
Good points raised. Okay, now we're gonna go on to the order that was added, and I'm wondering if the, is the numbering correct? I see this as order 23
We have a poverty abatement
Okay,
order
gotcha,
that's embedded in with the executive
Gotcha.
session.
gotcha. So order 23-19, order authorizing the town manager to expend up to $20,000 for payments associated with the salt affected well insurance claim at 88 Kelly Road with funds drawn from the contingency account. Motion to approve. And second. Moved and seconded.
I just didn't see you did the movement.
I went too fast, didn't I?
Oh,
Sophie, this,
This is me. So, under state law, those who salt roads get a little bit of risk in that if wells become affected by the road salt, we are on the hook for fixing it. And fixing it can take a couple of different paths. It can be a lump sum payment and somebody signs off. It can be replacing the water supply, which could be drilling a well or extending a water main. It could be repairing. So if it were something that could put reverse osmosis or something like that in, you could do that. Or if all else fails, you can buy the property and say, we're done. We carry insurance coverage. We didn't when I first got here, and we had a self-effective well claim, and we picked it up off of that. And unfortunately, that coverage has a $25,000 coverage limit. Most of the time, that coverage limit is plenty of money, but supply and demand for well drillers and a change in state law that limited the number of well drillers that could continue to drill in the state of Maine. So can't just come from Massachusetts or New Hampshire into Maine without certain licensure. You know what happens when demand is the same and supply goes down, price goes up. So we made the claim on our insurance. This is 88 Kelly Road. So right out as you come off the northbound exit onto Kelly Road. We made the claim. They went and got a hydrologist because the first thing that we had to confirm was that it made sense that it was our road salt. And if you recall, there is the parking lot that Northern Light used to maintain with the long driveway, and we know that Northern Light likes to use a lot of salt. So I think the insurance company was a little bit hoping that the water kind of went in that direction, and it was not our issue. It didn't, it is our issue. Well, by the time they get the well drilling done, pay the hydrologist, which actually wasn't that much money, it was only a couple $1,000. There are fixtures that need to be replaced because of corrosion and damage to the system, some piping, they have quotes at this point for 41,000 and some change. So that leaves us at almost $17,000 on the town's responsibility. On top of that, the insurance company is telling us that there might be some carpentry work that needs to be done. So unlike situations where we can go in and if we get a quote we don't like, we can try a different vendor, the statute is very clear that the homeowner makes this selection. So the price is the price. So the initial suggestion from the insurance company was to get approval to expend $17,100. My concern is that there's less than $1,000 from carpentry or overage or no drilling has happened. So we don't know if the additional casing has to happen or anything like that. So I am suggesting that I'm not going to pay a dime more than we absolutely have to, but to have $20,000 worth of authority would allow for a cost overrun without having to come back to council. The other thing that's different here is oftentimes the insurance company pays the claim and then we simply pay a deductible or not a co-insurance. But if there's something that we owe a percentage of, that goes, we pay that to MMA. In this case, we are making direct payments, which is why you don't see a name associated with this, because it all depends on how the contracts are set up. I'm not sure how that's gonna happen. So contingency, we have $10,000 in contingency. I am suggesting we spend 20. What does that really mean? I'm suggesting that because oftentimes we get to the end of the year and there may be money left in other accounts, so we can simply do a budget adjustment before year end and cover that cost without making a direct appropriation from fund balance. My suggestion is that we do that. If you're not comfortable with that and want to see it 100% covered, then I would suggest a revision to the order that would take it from 10,000 from contingency and the remainder from fund balance. But from a practical standpoint, it really doesn't make any difference. It is a lot cleaner on the books to try to manage it within our existing situation.
Questions, comments?
Sure. Are there any other that you know of wells that have been affected, and is there any others on this property, anything, so nobody else has come forward?
No, and I will tell you the homeowner here has been really easy to work with. They came in, they really wanted to look at extending the water main. I've got Mitch and Pat looking at potential, could we extend with $20,000 of town money and $25,000 of MMA money, could we make something happen there? I got the back of the envelope. And it's considerably more than that. And so, and we can't see the economic, the benefit at this moment. of doing that. So, yeah,
Are there, I don't know which property this is, are there other properties that would benefit from that extension that could pick up maybe, or no?
so Kelly Road is pretty well built out at this point for the lot size and the way it's established, and most all of them, they all have wells at this point. Most of them are not so close to the road, so I don't think they have the same risk. We haven't heard any complaints, have not had anybody. I talked to Boyd at the water district. Nobody has been asking, other than this homeowner, for the water line to be extended. There was some conversation about extending the water line over across the overpass. That would be a multi-million-dollar project that would not be something that we could get up and running in time to get these folks potable water. You know, it's investment property for them. I'm sure they're gonna want to get it rented.
Other questions?
How many claims across the municipality do we entertain a year?
So in the 11 years I've been here, we've had 3. And the other 2 came well under 25,000. We are the first ones for MMA that have exceeded their cap, their coverage cap. So there's been a lot of conversation coming from Orono about increasing the coverage cap in future years. Yeah.
Anything else? Any comments from the public, either here in the chambers or online? Hearing nothing. We're ready for a vote? All those in favor? All in favor, none opposed. Okay, future agenda items, items of concern. Does anybody have future agenda items or items of concern?
Ask, we had talked a couple months ago about putting a parking presentation on the agenda. Is that still on board?
And I have shared with committee chairs I've started to fill in the agendas through the end of the quarter. So in that planning document, you'll see, and I would love your feedback on what goes to your committee.
Great. Anything else in that regard? Public petitions, we have none. Public comments? Any public comments?
Talk about anything?
Sure.
I'm good.
As long as it's not repetitive.
What's that?
Did you want to speak?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, we have town manager's report that was mailed to us. Is there anything that you needed to add to that?
I don't think I have anything to add. I put it on here. I wasn't sure I was gonna get it typed up and out the door. I tried to hit on things that counselors have indicated were of interest, but if there are other things, I'm happy to talk with folks about just about anything.
I just add to your report, Sophie, Jeff and I had a chance to attend the Forest Avenue residents meeting last week, which I think was an excellent meeting, facilitated skillfully by our manager. Got some great feedback from residents that nobody disagreed with, that there is a problem. They heard what has been done about it and what can be done about it and what future steps are, and I think left reasonably satisfied with the future direction. So that worked out. That was excellent.
Can I ask a question on that? Those, are those things that are on Forest Ave that you still on Forest Ave?
The driver feedback loops?
Yeah, are those, do we own that one?
Yeah, so that belongs to us. That is actually called a traffic calming measure. And it moves, that's the whole intent of it, but it is, while people see the flashing speed sign, it's collecting data for us. It collects data on every car that drives by, so we know when cars are driving by, how fast they're going. We crunched data from about 45,000 cars. It's how we have learned that particular section between the overpass and Bennett Road has 1,500 cars a day, which is, I think, more than many people thought.
That hasn't been, when you're coming in Forest Ave, it hasn't been basically,
It's been all over the
it
place.
has,
And it's going to be, so one of the things that we identified, that's new technology for us. It's something that DOT has provided. And what we've learned is how it needs to be placed and how to get the data in different ways. Rob and Dan Merrill have actually come up with a new plan for moving it so that we get more circular data. So data that kind of gives us better points with equal amounts of time.
the reason I'm asking is because I think that is a very good tool. I know it's had me slowing down, going to the university several times, every time actually. So I mean, it is, and that was just, it sounded like coming in from Forest was a big issue too. And just curious if it had been used up there because I think it's very effective.
It's been used ingoing and outgoing. So I think it's important for people to understand that Forest Avenue is probably the most neighborhood-like concerns we've heard, where it's a group of people who have come together and they did their own data set. What's what happens when you have a scientist that's really interested in speed, because they did a data set with an individual who would go out for the time it took to smoke a cigarette, hanging out on his front lawn with a radar gun. And they picked off about 650 cars. And then Sean Smith crunched the data, and we had reviewed it and we were shocked because his 650 and his cosign, the whole kit and caboodle, when we spit our 45,000 data points in, we were within 2 miles an hour. So that was interesting. What they
However,
missed,
I need to speak with that gentleman who I will not name.
Yeah.
About how many cigarettes he smokes. Yes.
There was a doctor in the audience who mentioned that.
That's not-
so, well, that was very kind of, it's a cohesive group and it was very much a neighborhood, and this concern has definitely brought people together, and it was neat to hear about somebody walked along the neighborhood, knocked on doors and met people 50 yards away that they didn't know before, which was kind of cool. But we're hearing similar concerns on Bennett Road, College Ave, and Park Street. So this is, and then Sean brought up a newspaper clippings that showed it's a national phenomenon. Evidently, we put people in isolation for a pandemic, and when they come out, they like the speed.
You're crazy.
And so we're working to try to get that, to try to pull the beat on that. So the end result of that is Rob had already started working with VAX to try to give us a best practice policy or guiding document for council to consider and adopt that would direct staff in how to manage and deploy traffic calming. So what's important to the state is that in a community, not that everything is treated the same, but that there is a consistent evaluation, that not every request results in a speed table or a crosswalk, which is what we ran into on Main Street for quite a while, where there was a crosswalk on Park Street, where there were crosswalks on top of each other, which actually send the wrong message to the driving public. They're not expecting it, and they can be dangerous.
Hey,
Yes.
can I ask a clarifying question? I may have missed something. Did you reference like a written manager's report that had gone out?
Yes,
I-
it went out by email.
Was it called the town update? Was it that email? Okay, great. I just
Yeah,
wanted to
it's
make
just
sure
attached to it.
I had seen the right thing.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, we ready to move on? We have two executive sessions tonight. The first executive session is pursuant to 36 MRSA, paragraph 841, to consider a request for property tax abatement based on poverty and disability. And it is number 2022-004. And our second executive session is pursuant to 1 MRSA, paragraph 4056A, for the town manager's annual performance review. Could I have a motion to go into the first executive session, please?
So moved.
And second,
Second.
all those in favor?
So just to make sure people and the tape have it, the plan here is there would be a simple action either up or down on a poverty abatement and or a delay, an elected decision not to take any action. But that we are going to stop the live feed and the video, and any further action would be part of the minutes. There is no action coming out. Thank you, Bill.
Yes. We take a